Not that important. You know what is important? When you get to a college football playoff 2 years in a row, you come up short 2 years in a row, and you got a 5-star quarterback coming back the next year. That is the status of the Texas Longhorns, boys. And we are dusting off our to-do list, okay? So we're going to start a series here over the next 5 to 10 minutes. I want you guys to tell me what Texas has got to do to get back, not only to where they have been, but to finally get over that hump and potentially win a national title. I have a top 5 of to-do lists. Do you want these?
Yes.
Go ahead.
You want to go 1 to 5 or 5 to 1?
5 to 1.
Let's go 5 to 1. Number 5, replace Gunnar Helm and Matthew Golden on this offense. You want to talk about security blankets, boys. If you watch Texas over the particularly last year, Gunnar Helm and Matthew Golden were the dudes that they went to every single time they needed a big play. If they needed an explosive, they went to Gunnar Helm. If they needed a 3rd and 8 conversion, they went to Matthew Golden. They have to replace those absolute security blankets for this football team. Number 4, I really think this is important. They've lost a tremendous amount on the defensive side of the football. Basically, their entire front 6. Jim Thorpe Award winner at the cornerback position. Makuba's gone. They've lost a ton. But here's the deal. If they can highlight Colin Simmons, if they can highlight Anthony Hill, if they can highlight Michael Taft, okay, I really do think this defense can not necessarily match what they did a year ago, but they have difference makers on each level of this defense that if they do everything they can to make sure those guys are getting loose and active, I do think they can still have that playmaking ability that they had on the defensive side of the football this year. Number 3, and this is an important one, and they made this run in the SEC, and they were a top 5 seed in the college football playoff without arguably their best offensive weapon last year, and it would have been Cedric Baxter Jr. in my opinion. I have said since coming out of high school, I think this is Najee Harris Jr., and nobody used Najee better than Steve Sarkisian did at Alabama. Cedric Baxter getting back healthy is massively important for this offense. Number 2, replace the tackles that created a dynamic run game for you guys. 56, Kelvin Banks off to the NFL. Okay, those guys were premier tackles for you guys. They're going to be drafted inside the top 100. Kelvin Banks drafted most likely in the 1st round. You're going to have to replace that star power that created those outside wide zone stretch run games that you guys had this year. And number 1, the most important thing for this Texas offense, and it would have been important whoever the starting quarterback would have been, y'all have got to figure out the deep game passing, okay? Even in year 1 with Adonai Mitchell and Xavier Worthy and the weapons, or year 1 as a starter full-time for Quinn Ewers, not very good. I would say bad deep game passing attack. This year it reared its ugly head again. The yards per attempt dropped drastically for this football team. You have got to figure out how to remain explosive in that passing attack down the field.
I think my biggest thing about the running game, and I put this on my to-do list for them, is find a way to where your running game can be successful without having to make Arch tote it 10 times. Because as great as he is at it, and I know that's how they used him this past season, I don't want my 5-star quarterback toting it 10 times a game in the SEC for a whole season. I think you're liable to have him miss a game. And Texas fans have kind of seen how that can go, of how quickly you can lose a starting quarterback. Thankfully, you've had Arch to be the backup to Quinn over the past couple of years, but I would like for Arch Manning to start every single game if I was a Texas fan, and that doesn't happen, in my opinion, if you're having to force him to run the ball. So find a way to do that with Baxter and the rest of the, and I think they get back Wisner. I think he's coming back because they lost Jaden Blue. So find a way to do it with those 2 guys.
First one I went with is get Arch as ready to start as possible. I know that we all think that he's ready to start, but you cannot afford a decrease of output in the quarterback play. Yeah. We all saw last year that Quinn Ewers might not necessarily have been the guy to get you over the top when you need him to be. He wasn't
serviceable and winnable. Exactly.
You need at that level or at least something ahead of that, simply because of if you have anything less than what Quinn Ewers was last year, I don't think you're going to succeed on offense. And going off of that, improve deep ball accuracy, like we said. Throwing down the field last year was a big problem for Texas, simply because Quinn Ewers, his deep ball, I don't know what it was about it. It floated too long. It felt like it took 5 seconds to land. So you need to improve deep ball accuracy. Number 3 I have is maintain or minimize the decline of your defensive output while replacing a shit ton of people. We talked about all the people that were leaving on that defense. It's going to be a big overhaul for them this year. I would not be surprised if their defense is a little bit worse statistically. 4, get the kicking situation figured out.
Yeah.
You win the SEC championship and you don't have to worry about overtime against Arizona State if you have a kicker that is reliable. The Auburn guy, I think Texas fans really like him from what I've seen. He's a good story, but he needs to really improve. And then the fifth one I have is figure out ways to finish. I feel like the last 2 or 3 years, Texas has found ways to get into close games. Georgia in overtime, Arizona State, and they did finish.
Washington last year in the playoffs.
Exactly. Like, you've had multiple games. Now, they've done it to their credit. They did against Alabama. They were able to do it against Arizona State, but it doesn't happen consistently enough. It didn't happen against Ohio State. Didn't happen against Georgia in the SEC Championship. Didn't happen against Washington in the Sugar Bowl last year. They need to find ways to consistently finish games.
And I think it goes back to like the point of winning moments in games like that. And this was talked about to death in the Kansas City versus Buffalo game of Kansas City. They've won 14 straight one-possession football games. It's because they win those types of moments every single time, and they did it again against Buffalo. Georgia did it during their national title run. Heck, they did it against Texas this year. Ohio State was doing this. Notre Dame was doing this on their run to a national title. Texas hasn't quite figured out how to finish football games.
Have you heard that Mahomes stat? Fourth quarter opportunity to drive and either tie the football game with a touchdown or win the football game with a touchdown in playoff games. So the average stat is being 50%. So going 50% is good. Yeah. Drew Brees was 60%. Tom Brady was 65% or something like that. Patrick Mahomes is 7 for 7. 7 for 7. You give him the ball down 7 with an opportunity, or down 7 or an opportunity to win. He converts every single time.
I have a Patrick Mahomes stat for you.
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes has three less career roughing the passer calls than Tom Brady does in his entire career.
Tom Brady, the Raiders fan.
Tom Brady played for 23 years. Patrick Mahomes is in year 8.
So he shouldn't have as many. He hasn't played as long. What are you telling me?
He is 3 away with 15 years to go.
Oh, you're saying he's getting a lot of these calls. Okay, that's what you're saying. My bad. We've protected the first decade and a half of Brady's career. We didn't protect him until his knee got blown out against Kansas City.
That's true.
I mean, wasn't it kind of like the tail end of Brady's career? The reason why they started this?
The whole reason was because they lost a chance with Randy Moss to win a Super Bowl because Matt Castle had to go in week 1 because Brady's knee got blown up by a D tackle. And then they're like, hey, no more touching these guys at all, unless they're running and they're big and physical. Then you could just kill them. Cam Newton, Anthony Richardson, Justin Fields got this a little bit in Chicago.
Jaden Daniels.
He's not huge. I think they protect him. Yeah, but something about big and physical quarterbacks. Josh Allen gets hit hard. There was a Baltimore Raven. I think Marlon Humphrey got a fine for hitting him. So, yeah, some of these guys get hit really, really hard. Some of them get protected like crazy.
Yeah, I mean, say what you want about Kansas City. I understand why people don't like them and whatnot. I was just trying to make a point of winning moments is important. It's one of the reasons why Kansas City is going for a three-peat right now in the NFL. But kind of going back to Texas's wide receiver room, I guess it really boils down to Ryan Wingo stepping up in year 2, and then Jamie French being your guy as a true freshman, kind of filling that role for the absences of Isaiah Bond and Silas Golden, like pairing that up with Ryan Wingo, because Ryan Wingo was very explosive for them, a great yak guy, but you got to find multiple of them, I think, to really excel this offense, and so it kind of does sit on a true freshman, I guess.
I guess the good thing about them being so 12 heavy and them being so bunch heavy, I mean, they don't run 5 wides. You know what I mean? They don't need 15 weapons. They need 2 or 3 really, really good ones and a solid, sustaining run game. That's what Texas and Sarkisian offenses really thrive on, is feeding 2 or 3 weapons and running the ball.